Meine Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen hier zur Pressekonferenz der G20
To
Digital
this
Ministers.
press conference at the G20 meeting of digital ministers. My name is Tanya Alemani. I work at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. Minister Zypries will start, and State Secretary Machnig will also giving you some information. After the presentations, you will have the possibility to ask your questions. Please state your name and the media you work for, and also your country, and simultaneous interpretation is available. Minister, you have the floor.
Meine Damen und Herren, Sie wissen alle, dass das Motto unserer G20
Ladies and gentlemen, all of you are aware that the motto of our G20 presidency, and not only of this meeting, but overall G20 meeting, is shaping an interconnected world. So this really fits in well with the fact that we are hosting the first ever G20 meeting of digital ministers. I would like to thank the Chinese presidency for conducting the preparatory work. They were the ones who put this issue on the agenda. We have now taken up the baton, and the Argentinians have also said that they will also carry on work on this issue. Today we have signed and approved a declaration of ministers, and we have also concluded several objectives that we've been able to agree on. We have decided that we want to focus on 10 central fields of action, and I would like to single out 5 of them. First of all, fast internet speed for everyone. Secondly, inclusive growth and employment thanks to digital trade. The third point is international technology standards. The fourth is lifelong learning, and bridging the digital gender gap was also one of the issues, and quite a few of our colleagues said that it's not only about closing the gender gap, but also about closing the geographical gap between rural areas and city areas, urban areas, and also the age gap. And this was an issue that was raised several times. So fast internet for everyone. As you know, that we in Germany need better broadband access, but it seems that this is also the case for most other countries, with the exception of Korea, where almost 100% of households are connected to broadband. So all the other countries have some homework to do as well. And we have realized that we need broadband in order to be able to foster digital trade and Industry 4.0, because these two areas rely on real-time data and data exchange. As part of the last G20 presidency, we had agreed that another 1.5 billion people would have to be connected to the internet by 2020. Today, we have put another figure there. We have said that by 2025, we want every person in the world to have access to the internet. It is quite clear that if you want to expand e-commerce across the globe, you also need standards that are interoperable. And this is why we have decided that we want to promote standardization together, that we ideally have standards that are the same internationally. This is true for Industry 4.0, but this also goes for security, for smart cities and smart mobility, e-health and other areas. The third point I'd like to single out is lifelong learning and education. We have a separate annex to the paper, so you can read up on this. This is an issue that we talked about in depth. It was also the issue at our dinner yesterday. We had a look at Mini Calliope, a small computer that we are distributing to every German child in third grader, so that even young children are motivated to do some coding and to actually work with this. And we've had some initial feedback, and we've seen it's working well, because at our National Digital Summit, we started to roll this out. We have started with the state of the Saar, and it's working very well there. We're now rolling it onto other regions. So we need lifelong education. We also need better equipment for our vocational schools, but across all countries we need better education and continuing education for better digital skills to equip people for the digital world. This also means that we need to foster dialogue between all the stakeholders involved, schools, companies, startups and public authorities. Another issue that was very important to us is digital trade. And it is quite clear that digital transformation is a global movement, and if you think about it nationally, then you've already made your first mistake. So it was very important to us to really pick up on this issue of digital trade, and within our declaration we have committed to creating inclusive growth and employment through digital trade, and there is a separate annex dedicated solely to the issue of digital trade. You'll find it in Annex 2 to the declaration. The G20 countries have agreed to be constructively involved in the WTO negotiations on e-commerce and other issues so as to promote digital trade. We have also highlighted the importance of digitization for social progress within the world. We feel that we need to take everyone on board when we implement this digital change, including those that are not part of the G20. All of these countries need to be taken along with us if they need any carrying along, and that is because digitization, of course, has the potential to actually increase the gap between wealthier and less wealthy nations. But of course, there's also the potential of actually helping less developed countries to leapfrog certain developments. And we can see this in parts of Africa, for instance, where some countries are actually quite more progress, have seen more progress than we have, for instance, where e-payment is concerned. So we have furthermore agreed that we will continue to work on the issue of digital trade. As I said, this is a very important commitment and it was supported by everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, the message that we want to send is that we will work together, all of the G20 are working together to harnessing the potential of the digital transformation for everyone, and we've created 11 focal points, including the roadmap, and this is our plan of work, which creates a schedule and also a basis for our future cooperation. And I think this is quite a specific result. It's a very pleasant result, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank State Secretary Machnig for leading these negotiations, which were not so easy, I think. And I think you were finished by 7:30 this morning, was it? So it really worked very, very well. Thank you very much, Matthias. If I may add 3 points. First of all, I think it sends a very important message. There have been so many people saying it's not going to work, but we've been able to work with the new US administration and to achieve agreement in key areas. There were many who said it wouldn't be possible, but we have proven that it is possible because there was goodwill on both sides for constructive dialogue, and I think this will also be true on trade policy in May. Minister Zypries will be traveling to May, so we are hoping that we will be able to pick up on these discussions. The second message is that the US is now part of a multilateral system, and the roadmap sets out that within the G20 we want to continue to have these discussions, not at a general level, but also including some very specific steps that we have agreed. And this shows that multilateral cooperation has never been more important than now, particularly in a digital economy, because a digital economy is not compatible with protectionism. And the third point is that this debate has shown that over recent months we've come closer to developing a joint understanding of what the challenges of digitization are. Because over many years we've seen this, and now I think all of the countries have really defined the fields of action upon which they want to see cooperation within the G20. So this is a very good starting point for us, and this also means that this will be a multi-annual regional process that we have now launched. Argentina will take over the G20 presidency in this issue, and I hope that they will continue these discussions in 2019, because we will not see quick results or swift results, but we will see results. And I hope that this conference has been a contribution to this. Thank you very much. Ms. Lehmann, you can ask the first question, please. My question, as far as the discussions with the US administration is concerned, how did this go? Because at the beginning, the aim was to have multilateral digital trade and have this term included in the declaration. I can't see it now. I'm reading digital trade for inclusive growth. So how did these discussions go? And also, how did discussions go with China? Because this was very much about the issue of the open internet and whether or not China would commit to that. Well, first of all, I think it's number 27, para 27, where we see a summary of everything that has been agreed as part of the annex. And this really addresses this issue, and there is a commitment of everyone to open trade, particularly as far as the digital goods trade is concerned. The second point, the Chinese government has committed to the principle of free flow of data, and you can find this literally in the text, and I think this is also a very important signal. With the Americans, there was just one issue. It was about large platforms and about the question as to whether these platforms may lead to the formation of new monopolies, of a new concentration of power structures, and also how we should resolve this. And this was the last point to be resolved this morning, so we picked it up, and we did so using smart language, if you will, so as to address this. So it was one of the most important issues for the as far as the Americans are concerned. Thank you very much. Ralf Siener from the ARD in Brussels. So, can you give us this smart formulation? How did you actually, how can you tame a platform like Google? Well, we want to look at the impact of new business models in the economy. And what this really says is that we will take a close look at what is happening because of these platforms, how they are changing the structure of markets, and we have said that we will have a further assessment of this, and that building on this assessment we will then be able to take additional measures, for instance, in competition law. So this is the wording that we arrived at 7:30 or 8 o'clock this morning, and at the end of the day, everybody was able to agree with this. I think that our white paper on platform regulation, which we published 3 weeks ago, shows that Germany sees a need for regulation on this, and it's also an issue that is being debated at European level, because the EU is actually competent of establishing trade rules for Europe, and we feel that we can actually make some requirements as far as data privacy, for instance, is concerned. So we want to do this at European level, and I have no doubt that this will be possible. If I may ask another question, may I? Yes. Minister Zypries, you mentioned Africa, and of course it is true that they are leapfrogging certain steps as far as mobile services are concerned. Does this mean that development aid or development cooperation will have to change? Will we see support for optic fiber, for instance, to give Africa better opportunities, particularly with regard to the refugee situation? Well, what the federal government needs to do is take a stronger focus on Africa, and the federal government is doing this. The Minister for Cooperation has quite a large budget that has been earmarked for Africa. We need to use it smartly. We need to cooperate with German companies in Africa, and of course they want to train young Africans. I don't think it's just about broadband, but the money that is used to actually, or that would be used to create broadband access in Africa can be spent in better ways, I think, because digital infrastructure is not only about broadband. So I think there are other ways of achieving this and also a cheaper way of achieving this, and this is why I think it makes more sense to actually stick to the path that we have chosen, which is to actually encourage German companies to invest in Africa. At the beginning of May, I will be traveling to South Africa to a large international event, and Minister Schäuble, the finance minister, will accompany me. This is about actually generating investment for Africa. We will also visit Cape Town, and we will visit the Foreign Chamber of Commerce, our bilateral Foreign Chamber of Commerce, which has already been financed by Germany, and we will highlight the role of this chamber and give German companies a better idea of what the prospects are. Of course, we also need to talk to our African partners or the African countries, because sometimes there are some basic requirements that are difficult, and I'm not only referring to corruption, but sometimes also to very basic requirements that have not been met and that are making it difficult for companies to invest. So we need to engage in talks on that. And if you like, you could also ask a third question. I can remember that you said that 2% of German teachers know about the internet. This is what the lady from Deutsche Telekom said. Well, I don't know where this figure actually came from. Yeah, I was wondering about that. But just, I don't think she meant people who are willing to the internet. I think she said that they are able to actually teach coding. I think that teachers know how to handle email. Yeah, well, but she said that this should be an integral part of teacher training in Germany. Would you support this? Well, you know that teacher training in Germany is reserved to the federal states, to the individual German states, and we in the federal government have encouraged this. We have given some support by handing out Calliope, the mini computer. We can show it to you, and we're trying to hand it out to every child in third grade or third form. And I think this is a very practical measure which will also motivate children and teachers to engage with this. So the federal states are thinking about how they can actually incorporate these aspects into teacher training. So this is Calliope, our mini computer. It has some programs, so you can play rock, scissor, but you can also use it for coding, and you can measure humidity, for instance, in flower pots. So very nice experiments for children, and this is to encourage this kind of experiment. And Stefan Noller, who is organizing this for Germany, gave a very lively presentation about this, and all of the ministers had a computer and were working with this computer. Are there any more questions?
Warten Sie noch schnell aufs Mikro. Danke.
Florian Rinke
from the Rheinische Post newspaper. Ms. Zypries, do you think that German data privacy standards will take hold across the world, or do we think that we will see a leveling of standards at a lower level? Well, I think if we look at German privacy law, we won't be able to roll it out across the world. I think we will have some negotiations about this, and even in Germany we need to think about whether we can actually take account of the fact that so much data is being gathered without people even noticing. And I think overall we need to really have a new debate on this, or change the debate on this. Are there any additional questions? Ms. Jennen. One more question on the margins of the G20. Ms. Zypries, will you be meeting with your Chinese counterpart and discuss electric cars? And what are you hoping for? Yes, I will be meeting my Chinese counterpart. And of course, we will be discussing all the issues that are important in our bilateral relations, and this also includes the one that you mentioned. So, are you expecting a commitment on the Chinese side as far as the reduction of quotas and a shortening of transition periods are concerned? Do you think that the draft legislation will be changed? Well, it would be great if we were able to have this, and this is why we're having these discussions, so that we can see some change.
Herr Uecker-Seifer?
Mr. Uecker-Seifer?
Ulrich Uecker-Seifler from the WDR Economic Editors.
Standardization. Do we have a more specific schedule as far as the next presidencies are concerned? Because if you talk to tech people, they will say that our regulation and also standardization is often, slower than technical development. So what's the timeline? Well, we're working in parallel. So on the one hand, we have our international standardization bodies, and they are discussing standards, and we will do the same thing at national level. I think that you probably talked about this. Yes, there is some specific cooperation, for instance, between the Industry 4.0 platform and the ISC in the US, the International Internet Consortium. And in Europe, we have developed a RAMI reference architecture standard. And our question is how we can actually make sure that these reference architectures can communicate. And we will be putting forward proposals together with the ISC, and we will then feed these proposals into the international debate. And this is why I think we are doing quite well, and we want others to join us on this. We need international standards, there can be no doubt about this, and we will be putting forward this joint proposal to the Americans. I think this is quite a promising way forward. It sounds like you are talking about some very positive US-German cooperation, which could then also help lead the way within the G20. You also mentioned a critical point in these debates, or a difficult point in these debates, platforms and monopoly formation. You referred to the European level. What I'm interested to know is to know how the next steps will look like. Of course, we will look into the next steps, but what will happen afterwards? Well, we've come quite some way. The European Commission has already decided to put forward a regulation concept. Of course, the Commissioner has changed, and this has meant a slight delay, but we think that the Commission will soon publish this, or put this proposal forward. And as I said, we have our own white paper on platforms. I'm sure that you can find it outside, so you can take back a copy and look at it. Unless there are any other questions, we would like to thank you for coming here. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, State Secretary. Thank you.